The latest installment in the long-running Godzilla franchise, Godzilla Minus One, recently premiered to rave reviews, getting an equally high audience and critical score on Rotten Tomatoes, which can sometimes have a pretty dramatic split between critic and audience score, and it's really nice to see a movie bring people together in a way that's positive. The Godzilla franchise has had over 30 films, but this movie manages to do something fresh and unique with the character. First of all, the setting takes place not long after World War II, where Japan is still dealing with the immediate aftermath, while also having to contend with Godzilla. In fact, the film starts while World War II is still happening, and follows a kamikaze pilot named Koichi. He's supposed to be on a kamikaze run, but decides to land on an island instead, pretending to have technical difficulties on his plane, but really he's just not willing to go along with the attack, one that he's guaranteed to not survive. Him being a kamikaze pilot plays into the theme of this film, a role where he's supposed to sacrifice himself for his country, and him not completing his duty haunts him, but the movie also has an overall message of survival, among other important aspects. Things like the effect that trauma has on a person, and the value of an individual life, which plays into his character arc throughout the movie, because unfortunately the island that he's on is Odo Island, which is an important place in the Godzilla mythos, and Godzilla actually makes an appearance very early into the movie, which is pretty cool. Not for the guys who are on the island, they're basically just here to die, but it's a monster movie, it's to be expected. But there are movies where they keep Godzilla at arm's length, and will more tease him throughout the movie rather than really showing him off, usually because they want to save him for the big climax. And I understand the thinking behind that, but at the same time it's a Godzilla movie, and it's great to actually see Godzilla. But not only do we get to see Godzilla so early, it's actually a pre-irradiated Godzilla, so we get to see him in his original form. It's cool to see him as he was, and that he was always basically a monster, and we have an idea of where he's been and where he's going to be once he finally becomes the king of the monsters. Despite Godzilla being the namesake, the movie focuses on Koichi and his struggles. After facing the titular monster, Godzilla ends up killing everyone on the island with the exception of Koichi, who's the protagonist, so obviously he has to live, and also a mechanic, who will be important later. So now Koichi has survivor's guilt on top of PTSD from the war. He goes back home to Tokyo only to find the city mostly destroyed and his family is dead. He ends up meeting a woman named Noriko. She's also lost her family in the bombing. She's decided to care for an orphan girl, and the three of them end up becoming a makeshift family, and they're all just trying to get by and be there for each other. Things go south for them, however, when the US performs nuclear testing in the area, which ends up mutating Godzilla and turns him into the form we all know and love, and he goes to wreak havoc on Tokyo, because the city hasn't suffered enough. So Koichi desperately tries to protect his new family, while Japan has to band together to protect its future. I appreciate that this movie focused so much on characterization and made us really care about the characters. Sometimes action movies feel like they want to just skip straight to the action at the expense of taking the time so we can get to know the characters. They might feel like those details are more boring compared to the action scenes. However, it's actually pretty crucial for audience investment. You want the audience to care about the fate of these characters, otherwise you can end up with a spectacle with no stakes, and that can make audiences lose investment. But that wasn't a problem with Godzilla Minus One, and I think they had their priorities straight when it came to the storytelling, and its message of hope and moving forward even in seemingly impossible odds is really inspiring. I think there's a lot of lessons that Hollywood could learn from a movie like this. I've talked a lot on this channel about how this year has been pretty humbling for Hollywood, particularly companies like Disney, and I'm not saying they should make monster movies or anything like that, but they have been over-relying on tropes lately and it's become really noticeable, like how many of their protagonists have been dubbed the adorkable trope. But seeing the same kind of character over the past decade can be a bit tiring. It's the same with the MCU. A lot of their movies in the first couple of phases focused on character development, and having that central character overcome their hardships. But in recent phases, they've been over-relying on jokes and quirkiness, to the point where a lot of these movies ended up kind of blending together, and it also hurts the tension. I mean, imagine if Godzilla Minus One had references to outdated memes like screaming goats, or a cute animal sidekick that that keeps talking about his butt. It would have dragged down the movie. And it might seem silly to compare a Godzilla movie to a Disney princess movie or the MCU, but these things felt out of place in those movies as well. And I think the success of Godzilla Minus One just proves that Disney doesn't have to rely on these tropes to keep the audience's attention. Koichi's an interesting protagonist with a compelling story arc, and there's a real sincerity to the character and his performance. And I kind of feel like sometimes Hollywood is a little afraid to get too sincere. Maybe they're worried that it's too sappy, or that the audience might have difficulty connecting with it or being entertained. But honestly, I think the success of the movie just proves that that's not true. I had trouble finding the budget for this film. Somehow a rumor started that the film only cost $15 million to make, which is very low to make a movie, but the director confirmed that this isn't true, saying he wished it only cost that much. Either way, it's still really impressive what they were able to accomplish with this movie. I doubt they spent something like $200 million, for example, which has kind of become commonplace in Hollywood recently, which isn't working out too well because they're struggling to make back their movie budget and their advertising budget on top of it. And the effects don't even look that convincing sometimes, along with their VFX artists being overworked and underpaid. But this movie was able to pull it off really well. Godzilla was a fearsome presence in both of his forms. Plus, you don't need a break-the-bank budget to have a good movie. I think having strong characters be the main focus, while the CGI supports the movie overall, is a better way to go. Overall, I'd say Godzilla Minus One was very successful, both in its storytelling and at the box office. The only thing that really gave me pause was the idea that the world governments wouldn't get involved. Basically, the United States refuses to go after Godzilla because they're worried about the Soviet Union? I don't know, I just wouldn't be surprised if Godzilla ended up getting dragged into the Cold War. But that's not really the point of this film. But overall, I thought it was a great movie, and it'd be awesome to see more stuff like this. But that's my opinion. What do you guys think? Have you seen Godzilla Minus One? And how'd you feel about it? Let me know in the comments below, I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching everyone, I really appreciate it. Before I go, I want to give a shout out to a couple people on X who made some great fan art for us. The first is at Araxius Majara, who drew a picture of our cat Ava, along with a character from a game called Kitten Match named Abu. It's very sweet fan art, and I appreciate that you were thinking about our cat. The other is at Ragnarok Knight, who drew us with Reshiram and Zekrom from Pokemon Black and White. The 5th generation of Pokemon is actually one of our favorites, and it's definitely on brand for us with the monochromatic themes. Definitely a cool pick. Thank you both so much for the art. We really appreciate it. So with that being said, I want to give a shout out to the members: Tyrant Carnivore, Shiny Orc Boy, General Bolivar, Depth Charge Media, Samaru163, Gabby Hime, Verdant Range, JVR, Hussyman42, Nixel, Phil C, Taylor Ramirez, Caleb Nelson, Takari the Professor, Equestron, Norman Sweetcream, Way Beyond Coincidence, Garcia XV Legend, Hunter Rose, 80s Nostalgia Guy, Felix Spam, Soundboy00, Kitsune Fiora, Lucas Geist, Jay Draws, Blue Spirit, Bandito Bane, Meowsers, Sky, JinKZ, Philip, Stutania, Isaac Martinez, and Datadyne Executive. Thank you all so much for supporting the channel. If you want to become a member, you can hit the join button next to the subscribe button. We also have Buy Me Coffee if you want to support the channel that way. And if you enjoyed this content, I'd appreciate it if you left a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, and that part's free. Thanks again everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.